Call this meeting to order. We do have a quorum. First of all, are there anybody sign up to do any public comments? Seeing none, we'll close that part of the meeting. The minutes, everybody look it over. From last meeting, there is one correction. If you were checking to see if I read them, my name was misspelled in section 1, but not anywhere else.
And also the A, I have two N's in my name.
Actually,
The page.
the Habitat thing that I went to was not a meeting. It was a house opening or ribbon cutting.
Sorry, say that one more time.
I went to represent the committee at a Habitat.
Okay.
And it wasn't a meeting, it was more of a ribbon cutting.
The dedication.
Yes, that.
And she got a plaque.
No, we got a plaque.
We got a plaque.
Oh, excellent.
We're going to put it on your front door.
Love it, and I love
It was very
We're going to put
thoughtful.
Habitat for Humanity on your front door.
Right on the
Right on the front.
fireplace.
Can I make, this is not the time to say it, can I just say, it was amazing.
Good.
The event was, it was a ribbon cutting for a home, and it was so moving. The new resident, it's a couple, one belted out in hymn.
Oh, man.
It was, started singing a hymn. It was just a beautiful, like, chills. So they were so excited. I was so excited, and everybody there cheered for this organization for participating.
Great.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Did you get those whatever changes, or if there are any changes?
Yes, the two typos for Miss Lynn's name and your name in section 1 and your name in the votes. I did catch that.
Oh, and
And the change to the ribbon cutting.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so move for approval of those meeting minutes
With those changes.
with those changes.
Move for approval? Second.
Did you get that?
Yeah, Martin and Hayes.
Yep.
Mr. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Miss Lynn? Mr. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Chair Montgomery?
Aye.
Chair Montgomery.
Review compilations and assessments.
All right, here we go.
All right.
This is the heavy lift for the,
This is it.
first of all, I appreciate all the work that the committee has done, particularly since we decided that this would fall during the holidays. That was questionable, but that's the way it worked out. So, yeah, so we appreciate very much all the time and effort put into that. Start with the basics. The trust itself increased in value quite a bit. And that's the rundown you'll see up there. So we had about a 34% increase in the amount of distributions, both to the city and the nonprofits, which is the one that you're obviously concerned about, over the previous year. So pretty good results so far. And now that we have our investments fully allocated amongst the various investments and professionally managed, we anticipate that they'll continue to grow depending on the market, of course. So we got to always take a look at that. Like last year, let me explain what you're seeing up there and what you have in front of you, and I emailed out a little bit earlier, is that to provide the committee with a baseline to work from, we did the calculations essentially as they were done last year. We took the recommendations that everybody made, averaged those, came up with a number for a recommended amount, and added those up, and also considered the categories and the limitations that the trust places on the categories as far as what can be funded, and then decided how much would need to be adjusted if we did an equitable adjustment across everyone that's funded. And as I said in my email, that's just one way to do it. That's not a way that's dictated by the trust. That's the way we did it last year. It made sense. Frankly, again, this year, with the amounts that we're dealing with, it's still relatively small numbers. So, doing an equitable adjustment might make sense if the committee wants to do it again this year. At some point in future years, the amounts will be much larger, and more subjectivity on how you assess them would be more important than just an objective math spreading things out. So the committee, if we do this again this year, because we did it last year, it's not setting a precedent. We should never consider it setting a precedent, and future committees should not think it's setting a precedent. Again, the trust doesn't dictate how it's done. So the committee gets to decide, and once you get 4 people to decide how much they're going to fund a particular organization, as long as it's within the limitations that are set by the trust and doesn't go over the amount you have to distribute, then we're good to go. That would be the criteria on the distribution. So that said, if we took all the recommendations and the average number, what we ended up looking at for funding purposes was all those that the committee unanimously said should be funded. Okay, so if one of the organizations had a no vote, they didn't make the cut on the chart that you're seeing up here now because the amount of the unanimously recommended funding went over the amount that we have available. So that was how we drew the cutoff there. Again, not right or wrong, and the committee can certainly change that, but for baseline and discussion purposes, that's how this chart is created. And then we went and looked at the funding categories. And we looked at everyone's suggestion on the funding categories, tried to pick up the majority of those. They're very consistent. Everybody kind of put it in the same categories. There were a couple of categories that staff looked at and thought, maybe we should change that. And the importance of that is the limitations on certain categories. So if an organization, generally speaking, did some health-related services, but they did other things outside of health-related services, and we pushed that into the other category, that made our limitations work a lot further, and there's justifications for that kind of categorization. And there's really only a couple. I know we did the Red Cross, and I think we did the elder care, were the two that we thought, okay, they do some victim services, but they do a lot of other things, and on elder services, yes, it's health for the elderly, but it's also much more. It's socialization, it's just getting there, it's the caregiver and giving them relief, so it's a little bit outside of health related, and so we changed that to other as well, and then that made our calculations much easier and the numbers much lower when we needed to spread out what we needed to spread out. So for community and safety and victim services, the recommended amount was about $904 over the limitation. So there's 3 of those. Each one would, be $301 if you did it straight across. Just in the category, which we didn't do here, we did it straight across everybody, but if that would be it. Same health-related services was underfunded, so we could add 1,000, to each one to make it balance. Youth and education was almost right at the number, it's $431. And then the other was over, that's the most that was over. And that's the category that doesn't have a limitation on it, so, that adjustment there gets a little bit easier. But if you took all those numbers and added up what we needed to adjust and apply those across the board on everybody, then this is what they ended up being funded with the adjusted amount. And you should have a sheet on there in front of you that shows the adjusted amounts. And you can see the numbers aren't tremendously different. But it will then, the adjusted amount total to the amount that's available, $496 So that works out. Now, the advantage of having the spreadsheet here is if you want to make any changes, I'm happy to put the numbers in there, and our calculations should, in theory, I hope, recalculate everything, and then you'll see how the adjustment does for all the other individuals.
Do what?
What's the original number we started with? Up here. What was was our original number we started?
I think it was 500, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was using 500 when I was
Just
running all
right,
my
like
stuff.
500.
Just
Yeah, I think we just did a rough estimate of 500.
So then the extra 10,000 just rolls back?
Well, we were actually
That was an estimate.
under by about 9,000. So,
That's what I mean.
yeah, so the 9,000, so, we got to adjust off $9,000 somewhere. Yeah.
490.
Yeah. All the recommendations ended up to be 495, 131, if you took all the average recommendations. And again, we did a cutoff, so there were some that were recommended, because we're working with averages, there were some recommended that didn't make the cutoff that would affect that average. So everybody, don't feel like you didn't allocate the right amount. You did. It's the law of averages makes things a little bit off. So that said, if anybody feels that funding should be different for any organization, then this is the time to talk about that, and we can make the changes and see how that affects through there.
Lyle?
Mr. Chairman, I want to open up for discussion based on the groundwork that staff has provided here. The following proposal. Right now, there's 24 groups that fall under the green that we would fund. And we've gone with the idea that if one person should recommend not funding, to not fund the group. So here is what I want to open up for discussion. To fund, and this would have to prorate some stuff, to fund groups that have over 80% score, over 80%, and not more than one recommendation to not fund. If you will turn to page 5 of 8, that would bring the first 5 in that group into funding, and it would unfund, prorating that amount, the other 24. Kind of just throw that out as a discussion item to get other people's opinion of that thought.
And when you're saying over 80%, not 80%, so 80,
Over 80% and not
One or
more
more.
than one recommendation not to fund.
My comment is I totally agree that there needs to be, and that may be the perfect mechanism, but I felt a little guilty seeing, a one no on there and then they're gone,
I agree with that.
And so you've hit on something that, now, 2 no's, I'll go with that. I mean, the group is very small, so if there's 2 of us that say no, then I agree they need to fall into the yellow. But Lyle, I totally agree with you on that comment. That 80%, I don't know if that's the number or not, but
Mr. Lynch, if I could clarify, on the one no on that page, the Stepping Stones is at that 80% mark. Did you mean to include them or not?
I did
80
not. I
80
said
and up?
over 80%, and that's what I'm throwing out for discussion. I'm open to,
1 to 100 or...
yeah, that's just where I stopped. is
Thank you.
Over 80 and not more than one recommendation to not fund.
I think that's a very logical thing, because when I saw Oakland's on there and had a 94% and didn't get anything.
Well, it may be 85. It may be, you don't want to bring too many.
Yes.
That's right. I mean,
That would bring our number of groups from 24 funded to 29 funded, Wade.
How much did Stepping Stones request?
40.
40?
yep, 40.
40?
Yes.
Okay.
And I don't think we funded them last
Didn't.
year.
And we didn't fund them this year. We didn't fund them. I like them. Who said no?
Well, I feel I would like to fund Doors of Hope,
Yeah.
but there are also 2 organizations on the no, 2 no's that I am really surprised. So I don't know how we do that. With, like you're saying, with a small committee, but
Well, this is what I would say to Doors of Hope. We're supposed to get a mid-year report, and I would hate to set the precedence of not getting those reports and still funding their money. I think it wouldn't look as good. I mean, if they're not giving us a report to say this is what we're doing with our money, then it's not complicated.
I mean,
And what if we get 20 of them at one time that don't report, and then
To your point,
the trustees say, well, what are y'all doing? I mean, what are you doing with the money?
to your point, Carl, because there's several groups that we gave to last year that didn't even apply this year.
Yes.
So
Correct.
I feel like that's almost wasted money, in a way. Pardon me.
well, I would like to say I can endure athletics, which isn't in that top, but it's made the no category. I do know that, like, New Vision gives them about $200,000 a year. I'm not as worried about them as I am, go back up to Stepping Stones. That is a very worthwhile cause to me, and we didn't give them any money.
I'm open to changing that from 80%, at minimum of 80%, rather than over 80%, if that was your recommendation.
I mean, I think you visited there, hadn't you, Angela? It's a work, it does a lot of good.
They do.
I mean, in school, an 80 is a B, an 85 is a B plus. I mean, I think they ought to be B plus or higher, and that moves that number, that needle to 85.
No seats.
No Cs.
I-
Because then
give that money.
you're taking away the one no and building back in a B plus or
Okay.
better average.
Can
Go
I
ahead.
ask this question again, Craig? Please? Can I ask another question?
Yeah.
With the 409, with the, what is it, 496?
Yep.
Well, that gives us $9,400, basically. Instead of rolling it over, why can't we,
No, we don't have the 9,000. All the fund generated was 490,000.
oh, I thought we had 500.
No, we were estimating 500.
I'm with you.
We were using that kind of as our benchmark.
Pretty accurate.
Yeah, they got pretty close, but yes, no, I see what you're saying, Lynn, but no, that's all we got was 490.
Okay, I didn't, because I thought it was 495 somewhere, or something.
So keeping with the motion, and it was brought up, did we have contact with Doors of Hope that they did, and their reply was, our bad?
I generated email reminders myself to all the ones that hadn't submitted their report multiple times, and then the system has an email reminder that goes out. So I didn't make any personal contact, it was all done through email distribution.
Okay,
Enough.
If with Lyle's motion, or what, if that is a motion, we need to also consider if it needs to be a motion, if you don't report mid-year, you're not getting funded, or you are. I mean, we need to make that determination just like we did last year. If you had 2 no votes, you're not getting any money. We made that decision last year. So-
You're ineligible if you don't
Yeah.
report into us.
I mean, I think we're setting ourselves up if we continue down that path.
I mean, Doors of Hope is pretty well, that's a great organization.
I get it.
That big fundraiser.
They all are.
Yeah, they all are.
They all are. But, you know,
But I agree with you, Carl, that these formative years set the precedent. If it's a simple ask, report back.
Did they do it last year?
That would have been the
this
first.
was our first year that they would have
Did not
reported.
submit their midterm for last
Okay.
year, getting that grant.
And everybody else did, and it was, fair. Hey, we used up all the money, we used 50% of the money. I mean, it's very
I
simple.
wonder who
what they-
did that. Because that's a good organization.
Yeah.
I mean,
On
that,
board.
oh, that's why I was surprised that it was, but I mean, there are 2 no's on a feeding organization that I am really surprised. And honestly, Murfreesboro Coal Patrol seems like, to me,
Oh, gosh, that is
incredible.
great.
So I was just surprised by that.
But you know, they all are. They're all helping people in one way or another, making this community a stronger, nicer, wonderful place to live. And you gotta, I mean, you gotta have rules. This is a
Well-
lot of money, and it's gonna get a lot better. And that doesn't mean they can't come back in this year and reapply.
Does the police have something to do with Coal
Does that
Patrol?
make them ineligible for
Go out
just the
and find
next
them.
year or
They work.
No, I mean, they could reapply next year.
the following year?
Yeah.
Good success.
It's a
Yeah.
good,
Then they would report their
And I think
midterm at the,
That would get everyone's attention as far as,
but how can you make them? You don't turn
Make
it
'em.
in.
they don't get any money if they don't turn
I
it
know,
in.
but,
So, I mean,
I just
that,
can't imagine them just foregoing their chance.
I don't either. So you're punching in numbers to see what we're going to end up with Lyle's?
I'm going to try and keep ahead of you guys, but
Okay.
keep
that's
going,
fine.
keep going.
We'll just
I'm
keep talking.
listening.
But, I mean, I definitely like what Lyle was saying.
Yes.
And I think, is that the consensus of the committee?
I sense Lynn's passion in Doors of Hope. Well, what if Lynn wasn't on this committee? That wouldn't even have been brought up just now. The Doors of Hope would have just been looked over like the rest of these. And that's the way it's always going to be. There's always going to be one of us, or, all of us going to have certain passions for some of these organizations, but that's why you have to have these rules of what we're,
Well, actually, I brought up Doors of Hope.
oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I
But
brought Steve.
But the
Hinkle said, I mean, you've got to- we're setting a
That's why
precedent.
we're on the committee, was because we we know the stuff.
Yeah.
So like, our prior experience, if there was some organization, like some information that we had otherwise, that's why we're on, like, about if there was some organization that had gotten really slimy, that's not going to be on their application, but we would have
Yeah.
noted that in our
Th-
scoring.
This is also something, when I spoke to council, when they funded this, one of the council members asked me, how do you know what they're doing with the money? And I said, they report mid-year. And they said, okay. So that, as soon as Karen mentioned that they had not reported, and I called her about it, that's exactly what was going through my mind. And I don't want to stand up there and have them say, well, why did, you're supposed to be watching this money or know what they're doing with it.
One was automatic.
And like you say, it may take one time and they probably won't do it again. I don't know.
So we have, when the money is given to a group, there's something in there where we say you have to submit a mid-year report. What is that document?
It's their grant agreement.
The grant agreement. Could we modify the grant agreement to simply state, failure to provide a mid-year report will make you ineligible for funding
In red.
the following year? And that would address
Yeah.
that. And then that way, if they don't do a report, they won't ever show up on your screen to review.
And make sure it doesn't have an S on it.
Oh, that's
just
a good point.
Not years.
Just like several of the organizations didn't qualify because they didn't fill their application out properly. Be the same principle as that.
We couldn't go back and do that on this round, or are you proposing that we do that on this round? Because we didn't make that mandatory.
Yeah, I guess I consider that a proposal, Ronnie, yes. That if Karen, if we can, at this point, modify that form to state that.
Do they usually get two reminders, an automatic generated one, and then what, you email them, or? Okay, so they automatically get two? Okay, does that usually kick everybody up and they turn theirs in?
Yeah, so I did a kind of early check, maybe 15 days or so before, just to see, and there were a number of them. And so I sent from the CIT grant email just a reminder saying that it was due. and there was positive responses from that list. And noting that Doors of Hope hadn't responded, I do recall sending another CIT grant email out. And then the system is set up to do a one-day late email reminder as well to whomever is as a contact in the system.
And everybody else did it.
Yes.
I mean, that's good to know. If somebody asks you from that,
Yeah.
what happened, you can say, they were reminded twice, they were, and they didn't do it. So you have to follow the rules and the guidelines.
Put
Yeah.
that out as a motion that we modify the grant agreement, like we said, so that the following year, again, it never appears on your screen if they didn't follow the rules.
We have a motion
A second.
and a second.
Can I clarify before we vote? Is that retroactive to this year? Just moving forward?
Move forward.
Any other discussion?
Ronnie, they've already signed the one,
Just want to clarify.
Yeah, for it again.
Just wanted to clarify.
You're saying if they don't provide the report for this next year, y'all won't even see their application?
Right, they're ineligible for funding the following year.
The following-
The following year, which is
Yeah.
1 year.
Yeah.
Is that timing right then? So-
Yeah.
So we'll have that information before, perfect. I think that's great.
Any other discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Ms. Lynn?
Aye.
Mr. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Chair Montgomery?
Aye.
Okay, so then, going back, I have a question. So go back to Lyle's suggestion on how to do this, and show the committee. Is Doors of Hope in or out for this year?
They are, Doors of Hope would be in. They had 1 no, and they had 86% approval. So my proposal now brings in 6 groups, that are people that had that had 80% or more score, and only 1 no. And that brings in Oakland's, Doors of Hope, Possibility Place, Junior Achievement of Middle Tennessee, Amelia's Closet, and Stepping Stones Safe Haven. And I guess since I didn't get beat up, Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll throw that out as a motion, and,
To start that this year.
yeah, it's for this, yes.
Well, let me-
Next year we can do different, but,
So let's take a look at what that does. So
okay.
the changes were Amelia's Closet, Doors of Hope, Junior Achievement. Again, this is using the average of all the suggested, so only 6 people suggested to do funding, so 1 would be 0. But if you average out over 7, then these are the numbers that come up. Junior Achievement, Oakland's, Possibility Place. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Which one did I miss?
Stepping Stones,
6.
Stepping Stones, let's see.
It's 80%.
That's 80, so did you change it to
Oh, yeah, that was a
80 or
question.
more, per Lynn's suggestion.
80 or more?
Okay, I didn't get Stepping Stones. Hang on a second.
Thank you.
It's right at the B mark, Wade, 80. You're right there,
Just barely a B.
but it made it on your
That's how I
report
got through
card.
school, Wade, barely.
A B's a B.
B. For me, a C was a C.
Oh, wait a minute.
Let's move on.
There's a hope. I'm in the wrong sheet here. Hold on. Stepping Stones, 19,730. Stepping Stones.
If we are still discussing that, I still have the issue with the Doors of Hope, just because of the non-reporting. But we can take the vote and see what happens on Lyle's motion. Are you ready for,
No.
Okay.
Hang on a second. My
Okay.
computer's going to give me a hard time for a second.
Before we do that, do we need to take that to a vote to say that lack of a mid-year report should cause us not to fund Doors of Hope?
I think that would be appropriate.
Why?
Because they didn't report, and it's going to throw it into the deal.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's the
And
largest.
part of their agreement that they signed is they would report.
9/7/30.
And that takes away a sizable piece of the pie.
Yes.
If we did fund them to organizations that did report, that took us seriously. And
So, Carl, I guess you're going to make the motion?
I will make the motion that Doors of Hope is not funded based on non-mid-year reporting.
I know what you mean, Robert's rules.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Ms. Lynn?
Aye.
Mr. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Chair Montgomery?
Aye.
All right, more work for you, sir.
Doors of Hope went away, right? Okay. So this now, the difference it made in calculation, it dropped off varying amounts, but on an average, it's an average, yeah. The total difference, 6,506 because of what we added back in for Amelia and a few of the other ones.
Thank you. So we went from, we added 6, 24, so we went from 24 to 29 groups. And I like the idea that even though, yes, it does take away, it spreads our contributions a little to more organizations.
So we went from an average funding request of about 60, forgot, what did I say, 65 before? We funded an average 65 down to 53 because, when we fund the additional 7, we've taken money away from the ones that already.
That's what I understand.
Last year, we were about 43%.
Mr. Chairman, I still, and I hoping,
We're not,
I just wonder about Nourish Food Bank and Murfreesboro Coal Patrol, and it's just because my personal thought is that those are serious organizations that need help. But I don't know, maybe because we are an organization that has information, that I just didn't know what was in their applications that could have made them over the curb.
Just my looking at it, it seemed Coal Patrol was the same as several other that are dealing with homeless and different people. That's what it looked like to me. That the other organizations that are already doing exactly what they're doing, it almost seems like we're watering down the homeless issue in our city with so many organizations. That's my opinion.
Yeah, that was a concern of mine as well. So you talk about the duplication of services and the accountability of each organization, the individual leadership of each organization, the target of the client that they're trying to serve. It gets really hard to pick winners and losers in that group. So what you tend to do, you can't fund everyone. And so you try to go with those people that you know. And then we get into this, dilemma of, well, how do you leave out these others? Well, there's no intention necessarily to leave out these others. In anything that I did as I went through this, and it's hard, we all went through it, but you say, well, I know this group is serving, this need in the community. Oh, by the way, this group is serving this need in the community. Oh, by the way, this group is also serving this need in the community. And so it gets really hard to figure out who's doing the best job with the most resources from the chair we sit in. And so I think, to the point Carl's making, you make the best call you can make based on what you know. And so I had some of the same concerns you had.
I guess that it all has to do with familiarity. I have greater familiarity with these two organizations than possibly, the same, swap out. So that's why I was like,
Yeah.
really taken aback that those were on the no, so.
I get it. And Craig, I don't know if anybody ever talks to these organizations to say, have y'all ever thought about merging? I mean, they do a lot of the same things.
That's a very good point.
And you could get a lot of money.
Kind of have a
Just,
co-op.
when I look through these applications and I see the same thing, I'm like,
There was an organization, and I don't know who's replaced it because it kind of folded up. What was it, HARC? HARC was the name of it? HARC, that tried to coordinate the services that we're providing. For whatever reason, that didn't go well, and I'm not too sure of all the whole background on that, but that has since gone away, and they've hired directors and couldn't keep them and done all kinds of things. So I don't know if that's been replaced out there, if there is another HARC type of thing.
The COC.
Yeah, Continuum of Care.
The Continuum of Care has re-emerged following those HUD guidelines and have been moderately successful. I'll say this, on the agenda later is that support for next year piece. Something that we could discuss when we get to that point is if there's an education component, if you would like for us to bring in different educational components for this group. It doesn't help this group today, but before the next one, to have different themes, education, resources, that type thing, so that you could learn more about some of these resources and some of the thoughts of various representatives, if you're interested.
I mean, I think because we have 4 categories, we're always going to have a ton of agencies. I mean, if we just did health-related services or, with food and all that, it would be different. But you're doing the whole gamut. So we're always going to have a ton that are going to apply because you can't narrow down our categories.
And the interesting thing about that is when you read through this, not only do you have that duplication, but you have these duplicate agencies that are working together. And so you don't exactly know what they're doing in partnership and how they're working together. So, from the seat I sit in, it gets really hard, and I wouldn't necessarily put staff in the position to do this, although staff's probably in the best position to do this. What we talk about doing is how to best use this to benefit citizens of Murfreesboro. Well, in truth, the staff spends more time working those problems day in and day out than probably I do. I don't want to speak for anybody else, but, so where are those dollars best spent based on what the staff sees being effective, And that's can be tough to put you all in that situation, but just as a comment.
I met last week with the sergeant who oversees the police host group, the homeless outreach support team, and one of the things we talked about was how that group interacts with different nonprofits. He had some nice things to say about Cold Patrol and how helpful and Stepping Stones, how helpful and supportive they were whenever they encounter someone. He gave me an example of a lady with a 12-year-old son that was living in their car, and Stepping Stones was able to find immediate placement for them just last week. So there's certainly those, I think even though it might not be Karen and I that are directly in the trenches, I do think we have good contacts with some folks that would be nice for this group to hear from.
Lyle,
We have a motion.
your motion,
Did we get a second?
and do we need to clarify that, or do you have his motion figured out?
I understand that your motion is to amend the funding recommendation to include any organization having a score of 80% or more and not more than 1 no. Is that correct?
You're right
Okay.
on. Thank you.
And I have clarifying questions before we vote. One, Craig, could we talk about as best you can, a numeric value for what money that takes out of the pool as far as in sum that goes to the additional organization? So what's the sum total of what we're reducing to the current pool because we're adding, if we were to do that, adding to the new pool? And to Lyle's point, is that to be for this year's funding recommendation or for a future year funding?
Yeah, we're only discussing this year's funding, is what I
Okay.
understand. So this is one
So
time,
this
one
year,
and done.
but
Next year,
it wouldn't
you may-
necessarily roll to next year is
Who
what
knows what'll happen next year, Ronnie?
Yeah. So there, you'll see on the board there the categories and the effect of adding in the, is it 5 or 6? But the
Five.
additional 5 of them. Yeah. So all the categories are then funded over. The health-related services is the biggest jump. So there has to be an adjustment made across the board, again, if that's the committee's choice, across the board to adjust for the amount that needs to be funded. So
I would think that you would have to balance it out on that column as well.
on which one? The other?
Health-related services is now overfunded.
Well, they all are.
Yeah, they're all are.
So you'd have to balance out across the board for everyone for the entire amount that's overfunded. So right now, the overfunding is about $90,000 or $88,000. So if you go back and you make the adjustments across the board, you'll see the adjusted amounts here. So, the amount recommended based using an average of what everybody's recommended for Amelia, let's say Amelia's clause is $20,283 that's the average recommended amount. So with the adjustment, that would drop to $16,519. And that goes all across the board. So here's all the changes. So Amelia's Closet was adjusted for the $16,519, and so that added 15. So American Red Cross, which we didn't necessarily adjust, but need to adjust because we're over the amount, was recommended using the average at $17,429. By adding in the additionals, you got to adjust that down to $14,141, so make a $3,289 adjustment. Does that make sense?
Other than the fact that how could all of them be overfunded? That's before adjustments, correct?
That's
Before final adjustments, I'm sorry.
Yeah, before the final adjustment. So let's find another one in here here's one that was added. Oakland's was added, so it had 9,000. So, they increased by 9,000, but that has to be picked up by the rest of them to allow for that 9,000. At the end of the day, let's see, these are all the meetings adjusted. We picked up something. Yeah.
So you still got $6,000 to,
Well,
Fine.
that's the adjusted amount. So the total amount now with the adjustments, this is the adjusted amount, so
Oh,
these
okay.
numbers are now added in, it is 490,
Okay.
697.
there you go. With the new,
With the
5
new,
new ones.
yeah, all the ones in red on here are the new ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the new ones that we just added.
Okay.
Okay. So junior achievement, Oakland's Possibility Place, and Amelia's Closet all got picked up. What was the one?
You have Doors of
Stepping
Hope on there.
stones.
Stepping Stones.
Is it funded?
Stones.
It keeps moving.
Okay, stepping stones, hang on. We'll need to pick up stepping stones.
Yeah.
And we took out Doors of Hope for
The Doors of
lack of
Hope's still
compliance
on
with the
there.
rules.
Took out Doors of Hope.
So
Stepping Stones is
Craig.
19,730.
Reduce some specifically.
19,730, there's stepping
Reduce
stones.
them.
I'm saying like, not across the board, but specifically.
Specific, you can, that is correct. You can make adjustments to any individual ones, as long as you have, 4 people agree on that. Did you say Doors of Hope is in your numbers? Does it have a?
No.
Or did you take it out?
Took it out.
Okay.
So this is current and accurate.
That one's
So there you go.
This one's accurate, right here.
Yeah, this should be accurate
What were
right
you,
here.
do you have a?
So the recommended amount for each of the 5 also got adjusted to accommodate the
So I still
increases.
see Doors, am I saying that wrong? 16, Doors of Hope still has money on it?
No, I keep adjusting the wrong spreadsheet. Hold on. Let me go back here. This one doesn't. Where are they? Doors of Hope. This one doesn't, but I need to
Okay.
copy the formula down. So it doesn't change anything, but now it's off. There we go.
Good eyes. Like an eagle eye.
So let's see, Stepping Stones, Possibility Place, Oakland's, Junior Achievement, and Amelia's Closet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
That's it, yes.
Okay, so they were all funded.
What ones do you think, Collier?
I
Let's
mean, if
get-
we already have the,
Well, we've got that motion that doesn't affect what you're talking about. So Lyle has a motion on the table. I don't know if we had a second. We do not, we haven't had a second yet. Second from John. Any discussion other than what all we've discussed so far?
I'm sorry to read the motion one more time, if you don't mind.
To modify the fiscal year 26 funding recommendations to include organizations having a score of 80% or more and not more than one no vote.
And we got a second.
We got a second, call the roll.
Mr. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Ms. Lynn?
Aye.
Mr. Lynch?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
aye.
Mr. Martin?
No.
Chair Montgomery?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay.
Unless
Have
anybody
something-
has anything else, that should get us to a final on the funding.
I was just saying, like, if we were having problems, like if we really felt we needed to, it was an academic question.
Okay. I've got something that I want to bring up that I talked to Karen about. The biggest issue, or one of the biggest things I struggled with, I think it's great that we have 7 people that score, and the score is their score. It's what they think. The problem I kept having is how much do I allocate to that person that wants 65,000 and they scored a 92? And I was asking if there's any way, found it, or our city, somebody that's smart enough to come up with a spreadsheet formula so that we're all consistent with the amount based on a score, based on, we know we got, we're thinking we have 500,000 to work with, and somebody scores a 90, and they're asking for 65,000, and then there's another person that's scores an 85 that's asking for 65,000. If there's some way it would give us a number, not that we have to use that number, but we could always, like just now, we can type in what we think, but it would give us maybe a reference that we would all really be very consistent in what we're thinking based on our score. Now, Ronnie's score may be different than mine, but it will calculate a number based on that score. That seems to be very time-consuming for me at the end of the deal, when I go through and I had a 90 on somebody that was wanting X amount, and then I get down to the bottom, and they're a 90, and they wanted a different amount, and it seems like it would it'd speed up things, and it would keep it very consistent. Our scoring would be individual.
Ask ChatGPT to work it out.
Let's do it.
But see, I know exactly what you're saying, except for there are organizations that they deserve it. It deserves a 90, but in the end, we only have a certain amount of money, and our emphasis in our minds, so if someone, an organization is applying for soccer teams, and their application and everything they do fulfills all of our responsibilities, then they might score a 90. But to me, if there's something that, this is just me, if the application and the organization fulfills and they score a 90, and it's dealing with food, then I'm going to give, and we have a certain amount of money to deal with, then I'm going to give them more money.
And you could make that adjustment. It might just give you a suggestion of 20,000, and you say, well, I think they ought to get 25, and you put it in the box, even though but you may use their suggestion. It's like if I've got somebody that scores a 90 and they're asking for 65,000, and I think they ought to get 10, or, say 15, and Ronnie thinks they ought to get 45. I mean, our numbers are just, there's a big range there possibly that when Craig is crunching these numbers for an average, if I give a 65,000 and he gives $1, well, that's still a pretty good, that's an average of 30-something thousand.
Right.
But with 7 of us, the averaging is working pretty good, I think.
Yeah.
I like the numbers.
I think it's more of just trying to come up with something that was.
Well, at the end of the day, we have a zero-sum game. We have X amount of money, and then we have to, when we cut up that pie, only have certain slices for certain. So, but it's still a subjective analysis on how we go through this, and it probably always should be, because you do have to wait. There may be an organization that scores 80, but they're the only one that does what really needs to be done, and maybe they could increase there as we go, but so that's the subjective part of this. The best that we can do with this kind of analysis, the objective analysis, the math, is to give you a baseline to work from. So, we'll throw enough factors out there to say, here's how we come up with something. Now, when you subjectively go step back and look at, you need to adjust all that. You are going to need to talk about these organizations, and maybe there's something more. So I'm fearful of all the math that goes into this to suggest that this is the way it should be done with the committee, because it's really not. The only limitations are the categories and the maximum amount you can do to a category. You can go less than that, but you can't go over it. And then the trust says, otherwise allocate it. So, we'll do the math and we want to give it to you, but we are only a suggestion on one way to analyze it. You still need to apply your subjective analysis to it.
And, it's about passion too, because when we opened St. Clair Senior Citizen Center years ago, I was heavily involved as a volunteer. And I've kind of got a passion for that, for those folks that have spent their livelihood here, working, paying taxes, and now that's kind of their little getaway. Well, your passion might be homelessness, and yours might be feeding the needy. And it's just, subjective is a great word, because that's where all these organizations are great organizations, and they're helping groups of people in our community, and overall, it's aiding in our whole community. And I do wish some of these duplicative services could band together if they could just see. But I know they have different mantras and different, purposes, and it makes it hard. This is hard.
Especially when you see, and a lot of it is for salaries or administrative. And if you are funding administrative stuff on 4 similar organizations, well, just think if it was just one administration and the rest of that money was going to the cause. That's just what I struggle with. And that was just something was just on my mind about trying to figure out the money just every time I'm grading somebody, and like, God, how much money do I give that person,
I think you're right, but I think at the end, the end factor is how much you allocated.
Mm-hmm.
That's just, you know what I mean? It's just how much it may have scored equally, but it's what you allocated.
Yep.
I will say this, when we were going through this, I don't feel, and I guess this is being subjective, just for me, I don't feel as bad when I see an agency that I know that a church is giving them $200,000. And it kind of, like, well, if they don't make it, they've still got that.
Right.
And that kind of gets, when I know some of these have got some big backers behind them.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Let's see. So are we ready to vote on those amounts? Is that what we're ready for?
On the amounts that we have on the board here.
On the,
Yeah, that would be the recommendation to take to the trust board.
29 groups.
29 groups.
And we got
Can,
the math right on it, huh?
well, we'll double check. Because doing a spreadsheet in public.
I'm saying, I don't, no
is always-
pressure, but.
It's always a challenge, but no, we'll double check before we go by. So if anything is messed up, then we'll make either a rational adjustment or call the.
Karen, did you have
call the board back
something?
together.
No, I didn't know if you needed it to be.
Oops. Oh,
And while he's pulling that up, I definitely want to thank Karen and Angela and Craig for, I mean, it's a big undertaking. I know what we do. It takes a while, and then I know it's a big deal, and I appreciate it.
now, we can, if you want, take a few, I mean, I can have this printed if you'd rather see it in front of you on paper.
I can see it. I mean, I don't know if the rest of them.
We need to pan down for a minute.
I do think, I
Too
mean,
small? That's getting too small, isn't it?
it seems, proportionally to what they were requesting,
Yes.
it seems logical.
Come on, there it goes.
I mean, you're always going to ask
There we go.
for
And, it may be the day when everybody's up here asking for 65, but
Remove the ones that are not.
I don't know. Hopefully, we'll get into the millions that we get to give out one day.
I could do that. I could take these ones that are not funded out and make it a little bit easier.
There you go.
under the gun.
Yeah, yeah. I need to let Erin do this. She's the,
I'm going to say you could go up to the top and filter and take
Yeah.
out the zeros.
see, somebody's always got more expertise.
I'll show a really big ribbon at the top if I do it, and you don't like that.
Yeah. We all have our pet peeves on what should happen on a spreadsheet. The other thing, while I'm doing this, I'll say that we'll flip over here to statistics in a second, and you can take a look, and maybe that'll give you a little bit more comfort. I'm happy to share that when people ask about, what happened this year versus last year, and you can kind of see the difference. I'm going to lose something there, but that's okay. Doesn't matter.
Karen, I don't know, like, how
I did, but I don't
to
think
tell
they changed
organizations
calculations.
this, but it really
did it.
helps me to see who the organizations collaborate with.
But they're not looking at that now.
Like, if I've
They
never
didn't
heard
change
of something,
calculations, I don't think.
to kind of know,
Didn't change calculations,
if I've never heard of an organization, to know that they are
the
supporting
numbers.
ones I do know,
Yeah.
like,
Stayed the
so.
same.
We do ask that one question about
What else?
who their partners are and to.
And it helps.
There we go.
Is there another way to word that question that you feel would get a better response or a better answer? Or should we require that they attach letters of support, or?
The letters of
would you want to-
support, several things help me. The board, the letters of support, and who they partner with. And I also, when I go in, I see who all has contributed to them. I mean, those are, I guess it all has to do with who they're aligned with.
Easter.
Can you guys send this out to us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I will.
Later.
Yeah,
And we
I'll do
get
that.
on with it.
Okay.
Just real quickly, so the average funding is 53%. So on the average, people got 53% of what they requested, the highest being 77 and the low being 28. And that's up over last year. Last year was only 48%, so less than 50% of the request on the average was funded. And somebody got 100% out of their requested funding, and another one got only 21%, so a little up on the low side, so that's a good thing. The overall increase was 34% on, what was the funding, the total funding that was being done. So, any questions about that? This is the percentage that was funded for each individual.
If you don't mind, I would love that email also, in that, if you send that to us,
Yeah.
it would be helpful.
No single organization got more than 7%. Well, let's say 8%, it's a rounded number, so might be 7 point something. Got no more than 8% of the total amount, and none got less than 1%, so.
Okay.
Is that increase the range.
Is that the I column?
The I column here, yeah, that's the total.
Okay.
That's the amount of the total funded. So out of the 490,696, the average was 3% funded for any one organization, with a high being 7 and a low being 9. Yeah, I'll send this out.
Thank you. All right, we need a motion to use these amounts for our funding.
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we submit these numbers to the board for our funding recommendations.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion? Call the roll.
Mr. Hayes?
Aye.
Mr. Hinkle?
Aye.
Ms. Lynn?
Aye.
Mr. Lynch? Ms. Smith?
Aye.
Mr. Martin?
Aye.
Chair Montgomery?
Aye.
Felt like we're in a jury.
Next on the agenda is recommendations, fiscal year 2026, recommendations to the board. I don't know who that is.
Well, we kind of talked about recommendations a bit as we went along with the adjustment to the agreement. and-
Okay, so that's all part of it.
We kind of wrapped that in there, didn't we?
All right, we're so efficient. And the review of the evaluation process, same thing?
Yeah, so I'm specifically looking for any feedback that you want to provide on either the questions that we use to create the metrics, or the metrics themselves, or if there's anything you guys would like to see improved or changed in how you evaluate.
For example, Ms. Smith had mentioned, adding that focus and emphasis on collaborations and letter of support, and maybe just find a way to really emphasize to the applicant that you want to see these things.
And I think that's a good idea too, Collier said, because then what I know who gives, like to the Endure Our Church, then you'll know. You know what I mean? And that makes sense.
Yep.
It's a good idea.
And then-
Though I did think they picked up on that better this year than they did last year. There was more, when reading the reports, you can tell that it got across, somebody got across to them that collaboration just didn't mean we're here in the city. And collaboration means we're connected with other organizations, and I thought there was a lot more, you could tell they put thought, like, they really want to know that.
And then we have your comment on the calculations, either with Founded or finding some way to assist in the reiterations of the amounts and perhaps weighting them based on scores.
That's just a thought that I had, just,
We'll work on that.
it's, you know.
It makes some,
Okay. I can keep
absolutely.
The only other thing I had was, as we were talking about all of this, I know why I chose not to approve a grant. It's, it's in my head, it was my little litmus test. But I would really be curious, and I think I would benefit from hearing, again, we can do it anonymously, but somehow have the staff have us report to them, like, here's here's one reason. If it, for me personally, I'll just throw this out. If their board looked nothing like the city of Murfreesboro and it was a state board, that would be my first flag. I'd looked at the board the first thing and everything. So that'd just be curious. I mean, I know why John Hinkle would say no, but I'd be curious to why, here's what Ronnie's looking for when he's looking at it. I think that would be helpful for me just to kind of know. Again, we don't have to put our names to it, but that just kind of would help.
Is that legit? Can we actually do that?
Yeah, so I can add in a comment box under that, so.
Well, I don't mean while we're reviewing, I just mean now, afterwards, after the process is over, and here are some of my initial thoughts about, because you're asking, I think, very good questions about coal patrol. Somebody, may have a legitimate reason to say, this is why. I had legitimate reasons for the ones I said no to, but I would like, I'd like to hear from the rest of the board.
I think you're right. I totally looked at the boards. I mean, if they did not have, I'm not sure that it completely factored into it, but I also looked to see if they had the succession plans.
Yep.
Because I know the ages of some of those people.
Yeah.
And they need succession plans.
Yeah.
I mean,
Ouch.
Yeah.
it's true. I mean, it is.
Talk about old people now.
To your point, the things that I struggle with on the big, gigantic organizations that do stuff here, but it's hard to know if all the money is going into the pool, and is it going up there to Nashville, or is it going over here to East Tennessee? There's no way of knowing it. The little ones that are here in Murfreesboro, and it's staying in Murfreesboro. Those are things I struggle with, and one of the things, talking about reporting, like the mid-year report, which is the next thing on the topic, is how much was spent in Murfreesboro, like on a big organization. I don't know if that's the right question, or if it's in the application. Does anybody else see what I'm saying? I just, those big ones, it's hard to say where it goes. We have no idea.
The program description should be pretty focused on Murfreesboro, and then the mid-year report and the accounting and things that they do should show that money is staying. If it doesn't, then I think that's an issue.
And few fell in that category where it was a state organization, there was no board members from Murfreesboro, and it's like, you're not going to score real high.
Right, exactly.
But then you look at Second Harvest,
Yes.
which, and they're trying to roll in here, and you see those trucks roll in here, and you know where they're from, and they're trying to help feed Murfreesboro now, and that's no secret, right? They've contacted Angela, I was contacted, they want to partner with a bunch. They want to partner with our health services, our Hope Clinics, our St. Louisa, all these guys, Journey Home, that feed people. Well, there's a prime example right there. I don't know a board member on there from Murfreesboro.
Sure.
Or it's not even in Murfreesboro, but it is helping us, and they are going to do a great job.
Yeah.
If you all would like, we can prepare a survey of this group kind of in your off-season so that you can compile some of those thoughts, and what might come out of that could be something for the applicants in the FAQs, maybe just something where we question you all on this subject, we compile your answers, and then when this group meets in the off-season, review those answers and see if that's something that could be turned into advice for the applicant.
Sounds good to me.
I like it.
I too.
Mid-year report, reviews, anything like that we're talking about?
Same thing, just were the questions adequate? Did they provide enough information for you to make a fair assessment at that point? Do we need to reconsider adding a different question or rewording anything? Did you get enough information?
I thought it worked well, and as we were talking about the out-of-town board, that weighs, but that's not, that's just one of the factors. If the other factors are high, then they'll do okay.
That's right. That's right.
That's just a good example.
I think we're weighted very appropriately also.
You also got to figure if it's an out-of-town board and they're coming into town providing tremendous services, they probably have a huge financial source, $26 million budget like those guys do. Then we're back to the who needs it the most. So there's just a lot of variables.
Huge need, though.
But I thought the mid-year report was, it's helpful, and it tells you, they've spent it all or spent part of it, or.
One thing that would be helpful to me, and I think it could be helpful to the group, is for those organizations that were not funded, for staff to do a review of that, to say, is there opportunity for some partnership that maybe this board can't see because we're not working in that space day in and day out, and not necessarily to say, hey, you didn't choose wisely, but here's some information that you might not have had that was in the application that we can provide as staff as additional resources moving forward, to say, here's some examples of how this partnership, has worked in the past, could work in the past for future consideration. That would be helpful.
I like it. Timeline and support year-end 2027 recommendations.
Let's do it again.
It's all done. We've already covered that, too. We've covered everything?
No, I mean, start all over the process again.
Oh.
Okay, that's what that's for.
Was it?
Okay.
Repeat. Wash and repeat.
Yeah, now wash and repeat.
Wash and repeat.
Yeah, and it's also kind of what Angela had alluded to earlier. Do you want to schedule any additional meetings, to do any type of training or panels with the nonprofits, or is there any other additional support that we could help provide you with?
When's the mid-year report?
Terms. Who's 2 years and who's 3?
I don't know when the terms end on anybody.
Lynn, who are you trying to get rid of?
We got renewed.
Is this a resignation?
So I don't,
The board piece?
Lynn's got to go.
I'm having another
got a
fundraiser if
party.
y'all want to come to it. Y'all, it's 5, it's at my house. It's for a life hospice. Y'all are more than welcome to come.
I would say, Karen, this is my thoughts, whatever the group thinks, is maybe the meeting before we get those applications, which is, in October, that October meeting, if somebody wanted to speak to us. I don't know. I mean, that would be what I would think.
Do y'all get any negative feedback? Somebody calling y'all, like, why did this happen?
Just life in general?
Do this? I hate every one of
Be a
them.
whole counseling session.
I've gotten some feedback from some board members of organizations
I
that,
do.
that didn't get the,
And they wanted to know why.
Yeah.
But do y'all get it a lot?
What we do is when the denial information is sent out, there is information that says you can request a review, and I'm happy to go through the application and provide overarching kind of review. So we did have several that did that asked for that feedback, so we do provide.
Do you know the exact number of how many organizations got the funding last time but did not even apply this time?
I think there was 3 or 4. It was a small handful.
Puzzling to me.
Yeah, it was.
Me too. I thought that was odd that they didn't reapply, and they got money.
Spreadsheet of last year and this year and did all the stuff
means
before I
that
entered
they had a
it on the
project,
thing, and I
they got the
counted
money,
5.
and they didn't have to.
I did, I've got it too, but I think one of them changed their name. Like, instead of coming in as XYZ, they came in as YZX, but it was the same organization. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of eyebrow raising.
When we do the survey of this group, we can add a question about areas that you feel like you have gaps, that you would like to seek something, whether it's an education or a panel discussion or a group of people. If, for example, if we had a theme related to the funding categories for a meeting, whatever you would like to see, I'll ask that as well. If there's something that you feel like you have a gap in the information that's been given to you, how you could better serve.
There was an application that I spent way too much time doing research on because I'd never heard of them. The board was tiny. It was a mental health organization. I asked people in the field, I do think maybe they're like the best in town. But you know what I mean? Maybe there is an opportunity for just more information. But they did not put who they collaborate with, and they didn't have supporting letters.
Right.
So-
One of the things we had talked about early on is a lot of granting organizations will require you to have been in existence for 5 years or something like that. And I think that's a philosophy piece, maybe something that we need to flesh out with the group. Are you looking to seed startups? Are you looking to instead fund organizations that have been here a while? The other thing from a point of discussion and just your philosophy really does come down to your thoughts on operational expenses. Some people, by philosophy, that an organization has to pay the light bill and they have to pay staff and they have cost, and there are some granting organizations that only prefer new projects. They don't like to fund those operational pieces. So really getting on the same page there for your own philosophies and sharing that and how it's scored could be really helpful.
That might really be helpful for our group in the next round to think about how long have you been in existence? If we want to have a cutoff. I know it's in part of the scoring, but it's just, it might.
And they might not match. You might not have ever heard them and have to research a lot to find out who they are.
I don't know.
They've been here a while.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but
Exactly.
it might be
Which
something.
it is in our
to
scoring.
It is in our scoring,
It's heavy.
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Then you want to give the ones that are new, that have a great cause a chance, too. There's no
it's
side to that.
there is.
How'd they get
struggle.
started in the first place?
When do we need to have another meeting, Karen?
We don't have anything scheduled as far as your obligations. You're pretty much done,
Okay.
Craig, unless you have something else. But I think you're pretty much adjourned until the round starts up again, typically in August, which is to say if we wanted to schedule something, or you guys wanted to schedule something.
When will the final reports be due?
Those will be due July 15th, I think, July-ish.
You all might want to have a more thorough review of the final reports.
If you guys wanted to schedule a meeting to convene and discuss the organizations at that point, based on,
Would that be July?
Yeah, first part of August, yeah,
Well, we meet in
Into
August
July.
anyway,
yeah.
so why can't we just have a long meeting and
Yeah.
cocktails?
Yeah. Well, the only caveat is if there is a math problem here and it's substantial, then we may need to reconvene to look at the recommendations. If we find one, I'll send it out to the board. If it's really minor, unless the board doesn't have a problem, then we'll go forward, make the adjustment, and then go forward. But if it's somehow substantial, then we may need to reconvene. But I'll let you know. We'll do that quick.
Okay. So do we need to set a meeting in August?
If you want to do that, or we can reach back out a little bit closer.
We're going to stick to Tuesdays.
It's up to you guys.
I like Tuesdays.
Tuesdays are good with me, good with everybody?
Well, let us do this. Let us check with the airport.
Okay, and then just get back with us and
Cad's not
we can
here.
all chime in.
Yeah, we'll put
2 or
out,
3 days.
what's that, Survey Bunny or whatever it is? Everybody can wait.
Is there any other business before Lynn runs out of here?
The broom is in the corner.
Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.